Okay. Um, Hi, everybody. On behalf of Access to Integrative Medicine Health Institute and the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, welcome to a mindfulness experience. AIM is a nonprofit organization with the mission to provide vulnerable and low-income communities with access to whole person health and wellness. The GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health promotes integrative medicine by providing learning opportunities to health professionals and healthcare consumers. Today, we have two wonderful facilitators with us. The first is Dr. Leigh Frame, who's a member of the AIM Board of Directors, Executive Director of the Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, and the Director of Integrative Medicine Programs at the GW School of Medicine and Health Sciences. We also have Cynthia Powell with us, who's a clinical instructor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences and clinical research and leadership at George Washington University and a principal of Cynergy Wellness Group. She's also a mind-body practitioner. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Frame.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you should all be able to see my slides. And you will see on there that I have a new title. So I'm going to officially go ahead and announce it to everyone here. I am now the Associate Director of our new Resiliency and Wellbeing Center, which is under the leadership of Dr. Lorenzo Norris, who is a fabulous, energetic man who I'm so thrilled to be working with. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of really good things coming out of this, and it's going to help synergize with a lot of the things the office is already doing. The office does wonderful things like this event, but we've actually not done a great job about doing outreach within GW. So I think this is going to help get the word about us in GW. So that's something I think will help strengthen us, and hopefully we can grow this group here as well. So today I am going to talk about omega-3 supplements in patients with COVID-19. And so first, a quick introduction to study design. So this is what's called a randomized controlled trial, or you may have heard it called an RCT or RCTs. These are considered the gold standard in research. This is what we really ideally want to do in terms of research. And in an RCT, research volunteers or research subjects are randomly assigned to either the intervention, so the active arm, which in this case is going to be omega-3 supplementation, or placebo or sham, which is the control arm. And in this case, that's just no additional omega-3 supplementation. What this means is the assignment is completely by chance. So that's designed on purpose that helps eliminate any potential biases. And that elimination of bias is what strengthens the study design. And that's why we think RCTs are the gold standard. So this is the very first RCT of omega-3s in COVID-19. It recently came out. It's only one study, so we're going to keep this in mind. It's just one study, but it is a randomized controlled trial, so it's a good study. It's also double-blinded, which means neither the subjects nor the researchers knew who received what, which could potentially bias how they record data or analyze data, and that didn't happen. It's from one ICU in Iran from a period of May to July in 2020. And they had a total of 128 critically ill patients that agreed to enroll in the study. 42 were randomized to the omega-3 supplement, and 86 were randomized to control, meaning they didn't receive a supplement. Subjects were excluded for a number of reasons. I'll leave these here mostly for people who have a clinical background who are interested. But I think what's most of interest to the average person is one of the exclusion criteria is use of fatty acid supplements during the 3 months before the study. So these are people that were not supplementing with omega-3 previously. I think that's a really important point to note. So these are people who were not taking omega-3. They came into the ICU with COVID. They were very ill. And in this study, they're either receiving the additional omega-3 or they're not receiving that. So in the study, we had said 128 people agreed to be in the study. They were randomized. What happened is we lost some of them to follow-up. Unfortunately, there were some deaths. And then there were some patients who could no longer intake food and thus could not receive the supplements. So in the final analysis, they actually only had 101 subjects, which does make it kind of a smaller study. And only 28 subjects received the intervention. So we're looking at less than 30 people actually receiving the omega-3 supplements in this group. What are the results? There are a lot of results, but this is a great summary from Grassroots Health Nutrient Research Institute, which I really enjoy. They do a lot of they're very pro omega-3 and pro vitamin D. So we have to keep that bias in mind as we look at their information, but they do a really good job of trying to not be biased in their presentation. Anyway, back to the results. What did we find? So patients who were in the control group, about 3% of them survived. That's terrible. Patients in the omega-3 group, 21% survived. Not fantastic, but it is 7 times better than the control group. So according to this one study, delivery of this omega-3 supplement could possibly improve survival by as much as 7 times. Let's do a little bit more details about that. So COVID-19, we all know about lung damage, but it also does damage to other areas, the brain, your heart, blood vessels, intestines, and even the kidneys. And in this study, they found that the lung function was better in the patients with the omega-3. So it didn't just help with survival, but it also helped with their lung function. And the same is true with kidney function. So there may be some indication for these omega-3s to help with this in addition to hopefully helping with survival. But what type of supplementation did they use? It's pretty important, right? How much did they take? How often did they take? So in this study, they used 1,000 milligrams of omega-3 every day. And of that 1,000 milligrams, 400 milligrams were EPA and 200 milligrams were DHA. And these are the ones you typically think of when you think of fish oil. Those are the essential fatty acids that you really can't get anywhere else. And they gave this for only 14 days. So once they were admitted to the ICU, within 24 hours after hospitalization, they initiated this protocol. And for 14 days, they supplemented, and then they just observed. So in patients that had not been taking omega-3 fatty acids previously, 14 days was enough to see what we find to be a significant difference in survival. That to me is very promising because it is a short period of time, and it means that we could potentially affect change even in a short period of time. The other thing I want to point out is it's actually not a large amount of omega-3. When you look at other supplementation studies, a lot of times they're higher than this. But more importantly, in the ICU, when they're receiving this special formula for food, they're often not getting very much omega-3 at all. So this supplementation may actually be just putting them at sort of a baseline level of omega-3 instead of increasing it to more of a therapeutic level. So in theory, if we had a larger amount of omega-3, we may actually even see larger results, but that has not been studied. So what does this mean for you? Why do you care? Hopefully none of you have COVID or will have COVID. But what we need to know about this study is, what does it mean? Is it valuable? First of all, it's one study in a single population. So really we can only say that in ICU patients in Iran, there's the potential for omega-3 supplements to improve survival. We can't say that it's going to work necessarily in a US population where the diet might be different, or maybe there's more of a prevalence of already using omega-3 fatty acids. Also, because it's just one study, it needs to be replicated. So we need more studies that have more subjects and importantly, more diversity of subjects, because this is a very small population of relatively similar people. However, this is in line with the study of other benefits of omega-3s for health. So we see similar effects for other health benefits. So that makes sense. And it also has a plausible mechanism. So that gives some support to this study as being really promising and potentially important. So how do you get enough omega-3s? The best sources of omega-3 are from the sea. The majority of them are going to be from animals, particularly fish. And small fish are a great source of omega-3s. I've got a few examples here. You got herring, also salmon, sardines, oysters, which we all know are an excellent source of zinc. So there's another reason to eat oysters. And then a few other things. Being in Maryland, we have to talk about crab. Hopefully you're getting some of that with it being crab season. And that's probably the easiest way to get your omega-3, particularly when you're looking at these two here, the EPA and the DHA. And those are the ones that actually make up the phospholipids in your brain, are really important for lowering inflammation. And your body can't make these on its own. So you do need to get these from food. But there are other sources. One that isn't listed on there is shrimp, but you can see it's relatively low in DHA or EPA compared to those other sources. Also, some eggs contain omega-3 because the chickens are actually supplemented with omega-3. But you'll see here it's even smaller amounts of DHA and EPA. Now, granted, this is per egg. So if you had 2 or 3 eggs, you would get more. But that's still going to give you relatively small amounts of DHA and EPA. Another source is seaweed or kelp. and generally not very high amounts of DHA or EPA from just eating itself, but you can get supplements that are actually created from those. And we'll talk a little bit more about those coming up here. So would we need a supplement? So if we're on a plant-based diet, what is a plant-based diet? So that's a flexitarian, someone who might eat eggs or dairy, occasionally even meat, but they really are majority eating plant-based foods. They may be considered a vegetarian to most people. And of course, you have vegetarians that come in different forms, including lacto-ovo-vegetarians who might eat dairy and eggs. You have pescatarians, people who eat seafood. So they're basically vegetarians that eat seafood. They may also be lacto-ovo. And then you have vegans who have no animal products at all. So these are people on plant-based diets. And those people probably need a supplement because they're not going to get a lot of omega-3s in their diet. Also, another reason you might need supplements is if you are using it therapeutically. So there is actual practice guidelines for the use of omega-3 supplements in depression. So there you would need a supplement because the amounts are much larger than you're probably going to get from your food alone. And when you are using supplements, the number one thing is to make sure you're getting a quality source. And this is especially important to avoid mercury bioaccumulation from seafood, which we will talk a little bit more coming up next. So looking at supplements, first, you're typically going to see fish and krill. Those are the primary sources of omega-3 supplements. There are three forms. One is called an extracted oil. And basically, that's just the oil extracted from fish or krill. And it's mostly the triglyceride form, which is the easiest form of omega-3 to absorb. And then you have a processed oil, which they actually take that extracted oil and they convert it to ethyl esters chemically. That's not overly important, but they do this to increase the DHA and EPA. However, unfortunately, this form, the ethyl ester, is less easily absorbed. So that's where this reformed triglycerides come in. So they take this processed oil and they reverse the chemical adjustment back into triglycerides. So now it's easier to absorb. You have more DHA and EPA. So these are the three levels. You've got just your extract. Nothing's really been done to it other than it's been extracted. It's been processed to add DHA and EPA, and then perhaps it's been reformed back so that it's in that easier to absorb form of triglycerides. Vegetarian, the best vegetarian or vegan supplement would be an algal oil. Algae is actually where the fish get their omega-3s. So in some ways, you're kind of cutting out the middleman by going straight to the algal oil. And it has actually even more DHA than fish oil, which is somewhat surprising to a lot of people who think that, fish oil is the gold standard. In many cases, people do use it that way. They compare everything to fish oil as if it's the gold standard. It may also contain minerals, which is a bonus. So we know that seaweed is important for iodine, which is why we actually have iodized salt, because a lot of people don't eat seaweed, but you can get your iodine from seaweed. It's also more environmentally friendly. Seaweed is a plant. It's much more easily sustainable than getting fish. Also, it just has low levels of heavy mercury, so you don't have to worry so much about that mercury bioaccumulation. So if you are looking at a supplement, there are a lot of benefits to looking at an algal oil. Now, if you're looking at a supplement, how do you go about buying one? You get to the store and there are like 500 different kinds of supplements and you're probably overwhelmed. Okay, we've got some guidelines. First, it must contain 250 to 500 milligrams of EPA and DHA for general health. Those are general guidelines, but if it doesn't have the EPA or DHA, then you're kind of missing the point of taking the omega-3 supplement. Then choose what kind you want. There are free fatty acids, there's the triglycerides we talked about, phospholipids, and any of these forms are going to be better than the ethyl ester version because they are more absorbable. So basically just avoid the ethyl esters if you're looking for something that's really absorbable and you're actually going to get the benefits of taking it. Now, how else do you find a quality supplement? Luckily, there are third-party seals. So these are the big three: NSF, USP, and Consumer Labs. And if you see this seal on a bottle of supplements, it means that the company spent the money to send it out to these independent labs and have it certified as containing what it says it contains on the label. And why is that important? Because sometimes it's an easier example might be, for instance, vitamin D. If you get a vitamin D supplement, it says it has 1,000 international units on it, but it really only contains 875, then you're not getting the amount that's on the label. Or even perhaps the other direction, it could contain more. And there has been some indications where these supplements are quite off by 10 or even 100 times the amount if they don't have these labels. So I highly recommend this for any supplement to look for these labels. Another thing you can do is look at the GOED member list. And very similarly, this group has worked together to assure that their products have in them what the label says they contain. What else do you need to know? So oils go bad. You probably know this when you've smelled something that smells a little rancid. That means the oil is bad, and you don't want to be taking a supplement that has gone bad. So we have expiration dates to use. Don't take a supplement that's past its expiration date. Also, don't take a supplement that smells bad, because it could go bad faster than the expiration date if it's been left out in the heat or something. It's just like if you're going to buy fish. You don't want your fish to smell fishy. You don't want your fish oil to smell fishy and kind of off. Another thing that I think is probably important to a lot of people, it's important to me, is sustainability. So how do you find a sustainable supplement? With fish oil, you want to look ones that are made with small fish, perhaps ones that have short lifespans, and there are actually labels for this too. So the Marine Stewardship Council or the Environmental Defense Fund has labels on the front of these packages of fish oil that are more sustainable. So those would probably be the ones you want to go with. Also tend to be better products, higher quality products, just because people care more about their products if they're going forward with this level of testing and accountability. Also, algal or krill oil are more sustainable because they're actually both plankton. These are extremely small little animals or plants and they are incredibly abundant in the ocean, and they reproduce extremely rapidly. So these are a more sustainable form than a fish oil, especially if it's from a larger fish. So what do you want to buy? So Healthline came out with this top 14 brands, and I'm not recommending necessarily any of these brands, but I think it's really interesting to see who's on this list and how many times they're on there and the different costs, because the top 3 here are all in the $3 range. But if you go to number 4 and 5, now we're down to just the $2 range. And is there really much difference between 4 and 5 and 1 and 2? Probably not. And if you're on a fixed income or you have a limited budget, it's probably better for you to look down here at 4 and 5. But it's good to know that there are at least 14 brands out there that have been independently certified as being high quality. And there's more information down here you can read on your own. I also want to note that I do not recommend gummy vitamins, because there are gummy vitamins on this list, and I would highly recommend that you stay away from those. We could talk more about that later too if we have time. So I am going to go ahead and take questions now. I'm going to go ahead and actually stop sharing so I can see all your lovely faces. Okay, question from Irene. What is the ethics behind a blind study when the illness has such a high level of death? Oh, great question. So I actually personally am very passionate about ethics in research design. And I would say that the ethics of blinding actually has nothing to do with the type of disease at all. That's just how well your study design is. And I would argue that if you are doing a study, you have an ethical obligation to make it the best study you can. And blinding increases that. It improves the robustness of your study. It improves the reliability of your study, and it improves the ability of other people to believe its findings. So in my mind, they should all be blinded. But however, that is not always realistic. Sometimes you just can't blind things. In this case, everyone was taking a formula. They either added a supplement of omega-3 to it or not. That's really easy to blind. But if you had to give someone a pill versus no pill, that becomes a little bit more difficult. And obviously in the ICU, providing pills in general is something that we want to avoid. So there's always a trade-off in terms of practicality and ethics, and it's about finding that sweet spot. But I think the most important thing is to make sure that you are utilizing the data, people's time, the money that it costs to do all this in the way that is best and most fruitful. So often blinding is the case for that. Question from Linda, is molecularly distilled omega-3 the same as extracted you refer to? I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a manufacturing expert. So this is not, I'm not super knowledgeable about the difference between these. I know that is a type of technique for extraction, but there are lots of different types of techniques, and I don't want to comment on the benefits of either, and also because depends on the type of supplement. So omega-3s are processed differently than, say, a single nutrient supplements, but that is a type of extraction, yes. Is algal oil okay for people with hyperthyroidism? So that's a great question. I'm not familiar of any reason that algal oil wouldn't be, because it is just an extracted oil. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of extra anything in there in particular, but my recommendation would be to discuss that with your nutrition provider or healthcare provider to make sure it's okay for you in particular. All right, question from GD. Did you say that you have heart or lung problems, it's better you do not take omega-3 or too much fish products? No, I did not say that. What I was talking about in terms of heart or lung problems was how those are caused by COVID. And this study showed that at least the lung and kidney problems were mitigated. They were reduced by the use of omega-3. So if anything, from this study, the indication would be that taking omega-3 would be better for people who have those problems. But that is a bit of a stretch, and that is applying it beyond what the study actually says. But I will say that there is a lot of literature out there saying that people who have higher omega-3 intake, so that doesn't mean omega-3 supplementation, right? That means they may be having fish or things like that, do tend to have lower risks of lung function issues, heart disease, and similar processes. So there is an indication for omega-3s in health because of that.
Leigh, this is Linda.
Hi.
Hi, could I follow up on my question?
Go for it.
If you buy algal oil, does it specify the quantity or amount of iodine that's in it usually?
Ooh, great question. I don't think I've seen one that says that on there, but I also don't think it's very large amounts, which is probably why it's not required. So in order for something to be required on a label, it has to reach to a certain level, a certain amount. And I think the ones that I've seen probably haven't reached to that level. But that's something to be mindful of. I mean, and also just remember that if it's a trace amount, it's not going to be on the label, but it also means you probably don't need to worry about it, right? Trace amounts aren't going to really add substantially to your intake.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Question from Dana. Fish oil, omega-3 supplements always cause stomach issues for me, and that's common. Are there fewer digestive issues with algal supplements? That could be the case, yes. And the other way to think about this too would be, it may be the amount that you're taking at any one time. So rather than taking one large pill of fish oil, taking 2 small krill oils or 2 small algal oils, and spreading them out over time. So having maybe one in the morning, one before bed, instead of taking it all at the same time. There are some burpless omega-3 supplements that are supposed to be easier on your gut. I don't personally have these issues, so I haven't experienced that. And I know that it seems from the people that I've talked to that it's kind of a mixed bag, whether that seems to help or not. So I'm going to guess there is multiple reasons why this is causing GI upset. And one group of people probably will benefit from the burpless, and other people probably aren't going to benefit at all. And that's more of a dose issue. So definitely experiment. The other alternative was maybe you need to look at food sources if getting it in supplement form is causing you GI issues.
Thank you. Actually, I use a lot of flaxseed. That's what actually I have a doctor at the Center for Integrative Medicine.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And so she has me on flaxseed that I add into yogurts and things like that. So that helps.
So I'm really glad you brought the flaxseed oil, because some people believe that you can get sufficient omega-3s from flaxseed oil, but the literature does not agree with that. Flaxseed is almost exclusively ALA. It contains no DHA or EPA. Your body can convert very, very small amounts of ALA into a more beneficial form of omega-3, but it has not been shown to have sufficient levels to be used as a supplement for the DHA and EPA benefits. If you're looking for it for ALA, that's definitely the way to go. But that may be actually the indication for you, is they were actually trying to increase your ALA intake and not your EPA and DHA. But the mechanism we're talking about here in terms of lowering inflammation, that's the DHA and EPA. So you would need an algal oil if you're looking for a vegetarian source. Okay, Salome says, are not triglycerides supposed to be bad for you? Oh, it's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. So this kind of goes back to the whole like fat is bad for you. That's actually impossible because, for one, your brain is made out of fat. We all need fat. There has to be some fat in our life. It's required for our bodies to exist. So for one, it's all about the amount, right? The other thing is, when we're talking about triglycerides as being bad, we're typically talking about the amount that's in your blood. So that's not necessarily triglycerides in a food or triglycerides in your brain. It's looking at the amount that's just freely floating around in your blood. And the reason it's freely floating around is because it has nowhere else to go, or you just ate a bunch of a high-fat food that had that in there, and now it's floating around waiting to be stored. So that's really the concern, is about amount and where it is. This type of triglyceride is definitely the kind that you would want to intake. But that being said, as with anything, too much is not good either, right? So we don't want to have super high fat intakes, regardless of the type of fat. And so here's where maybe a supplement isn't a great route, because it's a lot easier to make sure you're not getting too much fat by having it in a food source as opposed to taking a supplement. Excellent question. Irene is asking about chemical accumulation of iodine in fish. I don't know a ton about that, other than it is very similar to heavy metal accumulation, right? So small fish eat algae or the krill, and then larger fish eat those small fish, and larger fish eat those large fish. And so with each subsequent rung up the food chain that you go, they do tend to accumulate whatever was originally in that source. And a lot of times that's good things, right? Like omega-3. A salmon has a lot of omega-3 in it, in part because it eats a lot of different fish that eat a lot of different fish that ate all this algae. So it's bioaccumulated that. But that also means that other things can bioaccumulate, like heavy metals or potentially like iodine. So in general, when you're talking about seafood, the smaller and the shorter the lifespan, the better, the healthier, because it doesn't have as much of an opportunity to bioaccumulate any of those bad things. Unfortunately, sometimes it could not bioaccumulate some of the good things, and that's where maybe taking a supplement like an algal oil supplement could help. Question from Rick Osgood. What do you think about cod liver oil? I don't think it has much EPA, DHA, but it has vitamin A and D. That's you're spot on. Cod liver oil is old school, and it's old school because it worked, right? People didn't get enough vitamin D, they didn't get enough vitamin A. This was like a panacea in the time when people were working in factories and had terrible diets. And that's why probably your great-grandparents, your grandparents all used cod liver oil. But it's not really the best source for EPA or DHA, as you're saying. But if you want to use that in conjunction with something else, and you do know that you need more vitamin A and vitamin D, I'm particularly concerned about the vitamin A, because you can definitely get too much vitamin A, and that's potentially problematic. Then it could work for you, but be a little careful with cod liver oil. It's a very potent item, and I would definitely talk to your healthcare provider about using that and monitoring particularly your vitamin A status. Follow up about flaxseed oil. I understand it degenerates rapidly. That does seem to be the case. So if you're going to use flax seeds, that you probably want to store them in the refrigerator for one. And then when you go to use them, you want to fresh grind them to get your oil out that way. Or you can buy a capsule, buy the supplements that have been sealed and hopefully are fresher. At the very least, they're being monitored for freshness, right? You know when the expiration date might be. Always good to overkill and maybe take your supplements and put them in the fridge. It's not going to hurt. It's only going to help. Heat is the number one reason that oils go bad. So keeping them in a cool environment slows down any of that oxidation. So I would definitely be careful with, and the same is true for nuts, by the way. A lot of people keep nuts out and they're not refrigerated. I'm actually one of those people, guilty. But they will stay much fresher and they will not oxidize if you keep them in the refrigerator. So particularly important for maybe nuts you don't use all the time, like say you have pine nuts that you use for pesto, but you don't make pesto all the time, keep those in the fridge, because otherwise they're going to go rancid, and even subtly rancid can be unhealthy, right? When you're getting exposed to these oxidized fats, it can be unhealthy. So we want to avoid that. Wild versus farm fish. I actually used to lecture on wild versus farm fish. Yes, I can speak to that. There's no inherent problem with farmed fish in terms of health. There's no reason that farming them should be unhealthy. What's problematic is what we're feeding farmed fish. A lot of times it's actually not what those fish are designed to eat. So for instance, with salmon, it's a really expensive product. People want to farm that, makes sense. But salmon eat other fish. And so how do you get enough food to these salmon? Well, a lot of times they will raise some fish, small fish, to feed the salmon. But what they basically do is they have a chow for salmon, and this chow is very high carb. And feeding carbs to a carnivore does not work out well. Like, this is why cats get diabetes, because they get exposed to too many carbohydrates and they're obligate carnivores. Salmon are also obligate carnivores. So by feeding them a diet that's not natural to them, their inflammation goes up, they're at higher risk for disease, they have lower nutritional value, and all sorts of other things. And my cat's about to visit. She wants some salmon. But so unless you have an understanding of where that farmed salmon came from, like for instance, Whole Foods or Harris Teeter that always try to find really sustainable and high quality sources for their seafood, a farmed product is probably okay. Excuse me. But otherwise, you don't know what they're doing to the farmed fish, if they're taking good care of them, if they're feeding them right. So that's really the problem with farmed fish. It's not the farming that's inherently problematic. But because of that, if you don't know, the safest choice is wild in terms of getting the highest nutritional value. The one potential benefit actually with farm fish is the heavy metals and bioaccumulation, because a lot of times they aren't fed wild fish that have been exposed to that. So there's a potential benefit to farm fish as well. All right, I think I'm going to take this one last question here from Linda. It's unusual to have hospitals administer vitamins and minerals to acute patients like COVID-19 patients. That's correct. Do you find omega-3, vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C being administered in the higher dose levels that naturopaths recommend for COVID treatment? The answer to that is no. I do not. That is not common. What typically happens is they're getting the real standard of care, and then afterwards, when we're in recovery phase, or for instance, like at the GW long hauler clinic, then they're referred to someone like Dr. Kogan, and Dr. Kogan works with them on that and their recovery. That's a problem for our healthcare system, and I don't know how we can change that model, because there are a number of studies like this one that show benefits to really small, inexpensive, low risk supplements, right? Like adding a little omega-3 to a formula is pretty low in terms of cost and risk, but yet we're not doing it. So we'll leave you on that. We're working on that problem, but right now, no, we're not seeing that in the clinic. So I will go ahead and turn this over to Cynthia so she can help us chill out.
Thank you so much, and I'm delighted to be here with you all today. For those of you who may be new to meditation and mindfulness, for those of you who may like a refresher, just some terminology I'd like to share with you. So meditation, according to the National Institutes of Health, is a mind and body practice that has a long history of use for increasing calmness and physical relaxation, improving psychological balance, coping with illness, as well as enhancing overall health and well-being. Mindfulness, as defined by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, is the awareness that arises by paying attention in the present moment on purpose, with curiosity, and without harmful judgment. Another way of looking at this is paying attention to our thoughts, our feelings, our bodily sensations, as well as the environment around us. Again, without harmful judgment and with curiosity. So research has shown that practicing mindfulness can have many benefits, including increased empathy and compassion, improved immune functioning, greater focus and concentration, as well as reduced anxiety and stress. And we'll be going through 2 practices today. So I want to invite you to settle into a comfortable position. You want to be relaxed, yet alert. And I invite you to take a moment to focus on where you feel your breath in your body. This could be in your abdomen, in your chest, in your throat, perhaps in your nostrils. And bringing attention to the sensation of the breath is a way to help bring us into the present moment. The mind, breath, and body are intimately connected and can influence each other. So we'll start with the mindful movement practice. And this mindful movement practice involves bringing awareness to the breath, posture, thoughts, and emotions as we practice. Mindful movement allows us to check in with our bodies and move in a way that can help lower stress, as well as strengthen our mind-body connection. And you can do this practice sitting or standing, whatever feels right for you. And as we move through the practice, please feel free to modify the poses as you honor your body, as well as any limitations that you may be experiencing today. So to start, I'm going to invite you to separate your feet hip width apart, feeling your feet firmly planted on the ground or on the floor. Making sure your weight is distributed evenly between your shoulders and your hips. And if you're standing, making sure your knees are aligned as well. Placing your arms near your body with your palms slightly open. And with an inhale, slowly raising your arms to the sides of your body, up and overhead. Palms facing each other, perhaps taking a gentle stretch up, remembering not to strain. And then on an exhale, slowly bringing the arms back to the sides and down by the body. Again, on an inhale, bringing the arms to the side of the body, up overhead, perhaps a gentle stretch. Move the arms back down and by the sides. I'm going to move in this way a few more times. I just invite you to move in a way and at a pace that feels right for you today. Paying attention to any thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations you're feeling. Again, focused on the present moment. One more round. And then lowering the arms again back down by the sides. Now we'll move into a side bending stretch. So moving your right arm again to the side, up above your head. Bending the torso gently to the left. Letting your right arm follow. Remembering to breathe. Moving your body back to neutral. And releasing the right arm down to the side. And we'll switch sides. Moving to the left, arm to the side, up above your head. Perhaps a gentle stretch toward the ceiling. And then bending your torso to the right. Your arm following. And we'll move through this just a couple more times. Again, inviting you to move at a pace that feels right for you today. Honoring your body. Whatever limitations you may be feeling today. And then one more time on the left-hand side, raising the arm up toward the ceiling. Bending the torso to the right, back to neutral, and lowering the arm down to the side. Now we'll move into shoulder rolls. So starting with your shoulders relaxed, moving your shoulders to the front of your body, up to your ears, to the back, feeling a gentle stretch in the upper back. And down, and to the front, up to the ears, to the back, and down. Move through this a couple more times. Again, tuning into your breath, your body. Remember to be kind and compassionate to yourself during this practice. And we'll switch directions, moving the shoulders to the back, up toward the ears, toward the front of your chest, and down. And as we move through this practice, you might notice that your mind starts to wander. If that happens, it's okay. It's very normal. Just remember to bring your focus back to the present moment. Be gentle, be kind to yourself. Bring your attention back as part of the practice. So we finish the last shoulder roll. The last mindful movement is a neck stretch. So bringing your right ear towards your right shoulder. Again, just a gentle stretch in the neck. You're taking a deep breath. Bringing your head back to central or to center. And moving your left ear to your left shoulder. Back to center. Right ear to your right shoulder. Again, tuning into your breath, any thoughts or emotions you may be feeling, as well as the sounds around you, can all help to bring you to the present moment. And perhaps one additional stretch before we end this practice, moving the arms to the side, again up above and overhead. Gentle stretch up. And a reminder that mindful movement is something that we can engage in anytime during the day and can assist in reducing the level of stress as well as connecting the mind and the body. So now I'd like to move into a loving kindness practice. It's going to be a little over 10 minutes. In a meditation, you could be seated, standing, or lying down. So I'm going to invite you to move into a comfortable position. Again, relaxed, yet alert. And the focus of this practice is to incline our hearts and our minds toward a greater sense of kindness and compassion in this world and in ourselves. And research has shown that loving kindness meditation can have a range of benefits, from enhancing well-being to aiding in relief from illness, as well as improving emotional intelligence. So I'll be suggesting a few phrases in this practice. However, please feel free to use your own, using phrases that really resonate with you today. And I'm going to invite you to either gently close your eyes or lower your gaze if that feels more comfortable. And begin with a few deep breaths. Checking in with where you're starting this moment from, mentally, emotionally, physically, perhaps spiritually. And bring someone to mind that you feel a connection with. This could be a good friend, an intimate partner, or other loved one. You can imagine them sitting in front of you and looking into your eyes. Get a sense of your heart in this moment, perhaps placing your hand over your heart and with intention saying to this person, may you be happy and healthy. May you be safe and protected from harm. May you experience inner peace and ease. And one more time, silently to yourself. May you be happy and healthy. May you be safe and protected from harm. May you experience inner peace and ease. And once again, breathing in and breathing out, connecting with your heart. I now invite you to incline your heart and your mind towards yourself and saying to yourself silently, may I be happy and healthy. May I be safe and protected from harm. May I experience inner peace and ease. And again, saying to yourself, may I be happy and healthy. May I be safe and protected from harm. May I experience inner peace and ease. And now breathing in and breathing out, considering a person in your life that you do not know very well. Perhaps someone at your local store or in your neighborhood, or a colleague you haven't spoken to. Connecting with your heart once again and saying to them, may you be happy and healthy. May you be safe and protected from harm. May you experience inner peace and ease. And again, may you be happy and healthy. May you be safe and protected from harm. May you experience inner peace and ease. And again, tuning into the breath, connecting with your heart. And now imagine expanding the sense of heartfulness and intention throughout the entire world. All countries, all people. And saying to them, may you be happy and healthy. May you be safe and protected from harm. May you experience inner peace and ease. And once again, may you be happy and healthy. May you be safe and protected from harm. May you experience inner peace and ease. Breathing in and breathing out, I invite you to do another mindful check-in. getting a sense of how it is for you at this present moment without any judgments. And as we bring this practice to a close, perhaps taking a moment to acknowledge the choice of taking this time during your day for your own health and well-being. You may want to bring some gentle movement to the body, perhaps wiggling the fingers and toes, stretching out the arms and the legs. And if your eyes are closed, when you're ready, gently opening them.
Cynthia, that was beautiful. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions for Cynthia. Okay. If not, then I think we can go ahead and sign off. Is there anything else you want to add, Cynthia?
No, just really appreciated being here with you all today.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful Friday afternoon.